Hello, everyone, and welcome to Interreg Europe's second thematic networking event. Today, we are focusing on more social Europe, and you are most welcome to join us to discuss possibilities for cooperation and future projects. My name is Miia Itänen. I'm from the Interreg Europe Joint Secretariat in Lille, and I will be your guide throughout today's session. That being said, there are more Interreg Europe colleagues behind the scenes. You can see them all on the list of participants with Interreg Europe attached to their name. We have some of them as speakers, some of them helping us in the chat and answering your questions, and some of them dealing with the logistics and the technical moderation of today's session. So let's get going. I would also like to see where you are coming from, so feel free to start the discussion first thing this morning and pop a quick message in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from and maybe give us a hint on what you might expect from today. What part of more social Europe is of your interest? Let's have a quick look at the agenda. Today's program is going to be divided in 2 blocks, and this shapes the discussions today. We will be talking first about social in the EU cohesion policy with representatives from DG Regio, the European Commission. You will meet them very soon. And then we will go a little bit deeper into the Interreg Europe context and what kind of projects and what kind of partnerships we are looking for in terms of the future projects. Our focus is on getting you all ready for our second call for project proposals, which will launch officially on the 15th of March in 2023. We are a bit early, so this is kind of a head start, but you need to start early to have enough time to build a successful project proposal. It takes time to find partners, build relations, and think about your focus and what makes your project unique. So today is an excellent day to start. This is going to be our first block from 10 to 11. And this part will also be recorded. This will happen here in the plenary. And then for the second part of today's program from 11 to 12, it will be you who take the spotlight. We will be discussing some of your project ideas. You will be gathering in smaller groups, meet other people from all around Europe, and have a possibility to really start talking about how you could work together in the years and to come. You have 2 tools at your disposal during today's session. The Zoom chat is there for you, and I see that it's already looking good. I see a lot of good mornings and messages coming in the chat. Please keep those coming. Let us know where you're joining from. And if you have any questions or if you would like to get some additional details on some of the aspects we're discussing today, put your questions in Slido. You see the connection info on the screen. It's slido.com #Interreg Europe. Our team will be there answering the questions in writing, and we will also be taking some of your questions live after each of today's presentations. That's kind of the basics of today. I would also still like to know a little bit more about you and where you're, in addition to where you're coming from, I would like to know how much you know about Interreg Europe, if you've already been involved in cooperation. We already asked you this in the registration, and I know that many of you are coming for info, or some of you are really eager to start sharing your ideas, but we have a poll. Let's launch our opening poll because I would like to see which of you are in here today. So how much do you know about Interreg Europe? And if you participated in our session on Smarter Europe on Tuesday, you will more or less know the drill of this game. We want to know if you already know the program, if you've been in projects, if you've maybe participated in some other activities, or if you really are new to the world of interregional cooperation. That will help us shape the discussion today a little bit. And we would also like to know if you're really mostly interested in information, or rather the networking side and the sharing of project ideas. You might also have another reason that brings you here today. We would be keen to know. In the poll, you can only tell us that you have another reason, but if you have one, put that reason in the chat because it would be very interesting for us as well. I see that the questions are coming in. I'll give you a little bit more time to think about your replies and use that moment also to stress that today is about ideas, inspiration, and possibilities for projects. We won't be going into the details of everything and all the aspects of the second call. This will happen once we have the call documents. Those will come in the spring of next year, so you will have all the information. But today is really all about picking up good ideas and seeing how to build on them and start preparing for new projects. All right, I see that 76% of you have already participated. I'll give you 5 more seconds to tick your reply, and then we will close the call. Let's close it and have a look at the results, shall we? All right, so 59%, almost 60% of participants, almost 100 people are newcomers, which is very interesting for us. So we will keep this in mind and help you to get familiar with the world of interregional cooperation and building a more social Europe together through exchange among regions. We also have some project partners or people who have been part of our activities before. If you are in a project, and especially if your project has a social dimension, maybe mention that in the chat as well. I think it would be very interesting for people here to know who to talk to get some hands-on practical tips or hear about your experiences as well. So start making use of the chat to build those connections. The vast majority of you is interested in information about the second call, 85%, 9% looking forward to sharing ideas, which is great, and 64% is looking forward to hearing about those ideas that we're going to talk about later today. Great. I think we have a good mix there, and I think that also sets the stage for our discussion. So for the first hour or so, we're going to really help you understand what More Social Europe is all about and what kind of activities would be good as Interreg Europe projects, what kind of partnerships, what kind of partners to look for today. So let's start diving into that. Our very first speaker today, or speakers, will come from DG Regio at the European Commission. We have Miguel Hernandez-Littlewood from DG Regio, who will kick us off by explaining how social fits in the context of the cohesion policy. We might also have Miguel's colleague, Boryana Spasova, joining us a little bit later. So let's see, we might get a double presentation. But for now, Miguel, very warm welcome, and I hand over to you to tell us more about social in the context of EU cohesion policy.
Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here to present what is the social aspect or social component of cohesion policy, specifically looking at the policy objective for a more social and inclusive Europe, implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights. I'm Miguel Hernandez-Littlewood. I work at the European Commission as a policy assistant in the Director General for Regional and Urban Policy, specifically in the unit focusing on inclusive growth, urban and territorial development. If you can go into the next slide. So before we start the presentation, we wanted to begin with an interesting photo. As you see, this is an interesting image that we wanted to bring up when we think of social policies, and specifically want to look at the duck in the middle of the group of flamingos, just because it's integrated into the group, into the flock of flamingos. It doesn't mean it's a representation of an inclusive society. This is with this, we want to highlight that marginalized, vulnerable groups are a key part of our society, but sometimes rather invisible, and we have to try to there have been attempts to assimilate them in the past, rather than adjusting society to be inclusive and attend to their needs and special abilities. So when we think of social policies, we want to highlight remember the duck. Could we go into the next slide? And this idea is ingrained into the heart of cohesion policy, especially in its objective to promote and support the overall harmonious development of member states and their regions by reducing the economic, social, and territorial disparities that still exist in the EU. And social cohesion is definitely a key element in that picture. It is because of the importance of ensuring social cohesion that cohesion policy invests at every stage of people's lives and sort of ensures access to inclusive and quality social services, whereas in be it employment, education, social inclusion, healthcare, long-term care, and so on. As this is a small recap, in the 2021-2027 period, cohesion policy has 5 objectives, as I'm sure you're well aware. And today we wanted to focus on the policy objective for a more social and inclusive Europe. If you can go into the next slide. It is interesting to explain the overall context in which this policy objective is emerged. We wanted to highlight that indeed member states are and the regions are the main actors in the social policy field, and European social policies are still competence of the member states, following the subsidiarity principle, allowing for action to be taken at the most relevant level of policy making to address the pertinent challenges. This is despite this context, social policies are still at the heart of the EU and are even mentioned in the EU treaties. The treaties specify a specific role for the EU in this field by supporting and complementing actions taken by member states. This is, for example, ensuring ensuring minimum standards, supporting coordination and monitoring, sharing of best practices, addressing discrimination, or proposing laws to ensure workers' rights. It has numerous instruments at its hand to promote social policies. These could be like EU court rulings, promoting EU social dialogue, providing guidance and monitoring tools, as well as mutual learning. And a key instrument in all of this is definitely the EU funds that allow to concretely address pertinent challenges in the social inclusion field. If you can go into the next slide, please. So indeed, the debate on a social, on reinforcing social Europe has been rather strengthened since in 2015 in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and at the heart of this debate is the proof that has been provided by several studies that member states with high quality work, good education systems, good social welfare systems, and actively invest in human capital are more resilient to crises. And this point is rather important, given that we are now currently facing a series of crises. Member states face very similar challenges, socio-political challenges such as demographic change, globalization, the digital and green transition, changes in the workplace, social exclusion, and poverty. And it's because of these common challenges that in 2017, the European the member states, the Commission, and other European Parliament and the Council jointly proclaimed the European Pillar of Social Rights, which gave a new momentum for strengthening social Europe by providing 20 principles that are sort of collected in 3 chapters, and these are equality of opportunities and access to the labor markets, for working conditions, and social protection and inclusion. And in last year in the Porto Social Summit, this pillar of was member states and the European institutions took a next step in transforming these principles into concrete actions, especially in the wake of the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, and set pertinent EU-level targets on social Europe. We have to also highlight that in addition to this pillar, there's been a wake on or reinforcement of EU action to ensure equality for all, and this is by a series of initiatives that collectively are known as the Union of Equality strategies. This is, for example, the Gender Equality Strategy, the Strategy for Persons with Disability, the EU Anti-Racism Plan, the Strategy for Combating Anti-Semitism, the EU Roma Strategic Framework, LGBT equality strategies, and so on. Could we switch on to the next slide? And this brings us back into cohesion policy. A more social and inclusive Europe, PO4 to shorten the name, is it's one of the main policy objectives of cohesion policy for this programming period, ensuring investments that would strengthen the economic and social cohesion. It's one of it's the objective of the European Social Fund Plus, and one of the 5 for the European Regional Development Fund, and these are targeting more social and supportive, effective and inclusive labor markets, education and training, social inclusion, equal access to healthcare and long-term care, and enhancing the role of culture and sustainable tourism in socio-economic development. And now I'll quickly address each of these specific objectives to present the narrative and the most pressing challenges and how cohesion policy is addressing these. So if we can move on to into the next one. Indeed, the first one is related to the labor market. We're experiencing numerous challenges in this field, especially following the impact of COVID and our transition into a more resilient and sustainable economic model. We see new forms of work and the potential to create employment through digital transformation. However, there are also sort of key gaps reflected in how the labor market still is sort of segmented, and the need for workers to access training skills to obtain basic skills for these new form of work, and this specific objective boosts or strengthens member states and regions actions in ensuring equal access to the labor market, mainly to boost the social fairness of our socio-economic system, but also counterbalancing the decline of the labor force in the wake of the demographic challenges. And the policy, this specific objective focused mainly on the transformational changes, including the modernization of labor market institutions, as well as investments in vocational and other training system to improve the effectiveness, efficiency, and the access to the labor markets according to identified needs in employment and training and lifelong learning. And you can see in this slide some example of actions that can be supported under this specific objective. If we can switch to the next slide. The second specific objective focuses on education, training, and lifelong learning. we understand that the investments in quality and inclusive education, training, and lifelong learning are not only a means to increase the employability of persons and enhancing their ability to access quality employment, especially taking advantage of the opportunities that the digital and green transition bring forward, but is also a means to supporting social cohesion. Social mobility and preventing the intergenerational transmission of disadvantages, and therefore also a useful tool to tackle poverty. And some persistent challenges, despite the advancement in this field, are the inadequate access to mainstream education and training, especially for vulnerable groups, and the persistent of segregated settings in education, the poor educational outcomes and high rates of early leaving in specific regions, the still strong impact of socioeconomic background on educational performance, gaps in digital in digital education. This is a rather long list of challenges. Apologies for that, but indeed, or even the mismatch of the choice of education and labor market needs, challenges in skills recognition, and the low level of participation of in lifelong learning opportunities. These are just to name a few, as the list is rather extensive. And here, ERDF plays a key role in supporting regions in educational structural reforms, as well as increasing the quality, inclusiveness, and accessibility of education and training facilities, specifically contributing to the new targets in the field brought by the European Education Area framework. So the main focus of cohesion policy here is improving the access, developing the quality, accessible, inclusive education infrastructure, also through digital education, and sort of addressing identified barriers that certain groups face in accessing these, as well as ensuring the labor market relevance of education. And if we can go to the next slide. At the heart of the policy objective is also those related to tackling poverty and promoting social inclusion. These are identified. These are supported by two specific objectives that work in a very similar fashion. One more focused on the integration of persons with migrant background. We're seeing that the relative situation of vulnerable groups has not been improving in the last year, and this has been highlighted by specific gaps in the social safety net. In addition to that, it's important to ensure that any negative effect that might be brought by the twin transition should be mitigated, especially for low-income households that might not have the ability to move forward in this transition into digital and green socioeconomic model. And therefore, we're still seeing also specific challenges in accessing social services and persistent segregated settings where specific groups are marginalized in our society. This also includes access to social housing, which still remains a challenge in numerous member states and regions, these two specific objectives focus specifically on promoting the socio-economic inclusion of marginalized communities, low-income households, and disadvantaged groups. And ERDF focus specifically also on ensuring access to housing and social services. And you can see in the screen some example of concrete actions. If we move on to the next slide, we're seeing, especially in the wake or throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, how healthcare systems have been put on the test, and there are concrete challenges related to the resilience of the healthcare and long-term care models, especially to address medical needs in normal circumstances and in crisis situations, and the main focus is to support regions to develop a more person-centered, patient-centered model that addresses their needs at an earlier stage rather than leaving it to emergency situations. And having this will allow to address also the financial sustainability of such an important service, and ensuring that people have access to healthcare and long-term care at their most immediate circumstance. Another point, another challenge is related to the aging, the aging process in that many member states and regions are facing, and how we respond to the rising needs. Rising care needs, and this has been highlighted as well through the promotion of the European Care Strategy at the heart of the EU to address these challenges. And cohesion policy here focuses on promoting a stronger public health care system, the increase of digital tools, and the reorganization of care models, with the overall objective of making healthcare system more effective, accessible, and resilient. And here we also wanted to highlight the importance of the deinstitutionalization system, ensuring that people in residential care facilities have access to community and family-based care services in order to respect their right to independent living as a concrete also challenge. And here you can see also the some example of actions. And if we go into the next slide, I'm not sure how we're doing with time. Are we okay? Or
Well, keep going. We still have a few more aspects to cover, definitely. But yes, we do have a few more minutes to go. But please try to keep it short.
Thank you. I'll keep it short indeed. And this specific objective, focus on culture and sustainable tourism, is a novelty in cohesion policy, and it sort of is a recognition of the role of culture and sustainable tourism has, especially in specific regions that depend on these sectors in promoting economic development, social inclusion, and social innovation. We're I think the main challenge, we think that the main challenge here is sort of ensuring that these two important sectors have an opportunity to address the impact that COVID-19 has had on the sectors, as well as in ensuring that they are the sectors are transformed into a more sustainable and a resilient model by focusing on the digital and green transformation and other aspects of sustainability, including social sustainability. Indeed, there is an increase in a significant investment gap in these sectors, and that not only puts the sectors at risk, but also regions that depend on these sectors as well. And the main challenge is ensuring such transformation and sort of enhancing their capacity to address socio economic challenges in specific regions. As well as ensuring social sustainability aspects such as a tourism that promotes a positive impact for residents, boosting social innovation, improving or developing new collaborative management models, and so on. And these challenges are sort of reflected in tourism through the new policy orientations included in the transition pathway for tourism, which was co-designed and will be co-implemented by stakeholders, including member states and active stakeholders in the field, and the work plan for culture. Indeed, here are again some example of actions. And if we can go to the next two slides here, we wanted to maybe pick out an important transversal element, which is social innovation. EIDF and also Interreg have been Interreg programs have also been rather promoting the opportunities for EU-wide experimentation based on social innovation principles, and this is social innovation as such can be supported in any policy objective, but has a specific place in under the policy objective for specifically looking at employment and social inclusion and innovation for culture and tourism, as it recognizes also the role of ensuring that the labor market and employment opportunities take into account the needs of vulnerable groups and provide avenues for accessing employment, and also ensuring that, as I mentioned before, tourism and culture contribute to the social sustainability aspect, and providing new ways or new models for services in these sectors. And if we go into the last slide, at the heart of this policy objective is sort of the dual approach. Cohesion policy aims at mainstreaming equality and non-discrimination principles by ensuring that supported services also take into account the perspective of vulnerable groups and include specific measures to ensure that these are quality and inclusive services, but at the same time we recognize there are specific gaps still exist, and therefore specific actions are needed to close the gaps. Either by specific projects or specific policies. So it's a combination of these two that really ensure that we address persistent socioeconomic challenges, and we aim at a more inclusive society, bearing in mind what we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Don't forget the duck. So really ensuring that the perspective, that the social policies have in mind the needs and the potential of vulnerable groups. Thank you.
Thank you for this overview. I would also like to, before we take any questions, I would like to welcome another representative from DG Regio, Boryana Spasova, policy officer from DG Regio, working in the same unit as Miguel. Maybe before any further discussion, Boryana, any additional comments or remarks from you?
Actually, no, I think we don't want to prolong the presentation, but we're here to reply to all kinds of questions and to also hear to read your proposals for projects. Quite interesting discussion in the chat.
Indeed, the chat has been very, very active. We have a very nice group of participants working on very different aspects, because there are many different issues and challenges to tackle in the field of social. Maybe then just my final question, just to see how these people could or should work together. What is maybe your tip? What kind of cooperation you would like to see, or what type of challenges would you put on the list of top priorities to tackle? What kind of cooperation do you want to see come out of projects such as Interreg Europe?
I can also maybe take this one, but Miguel can also jump in. For us, what is very, very exciting to see is that Interreg offers this platform for innovation and social innovation, and And again, it doesn't mean that you have to come up with something completely brand new, but it's taking a good idea that works somewhere and implementing it somewhere else. And we are always very, very fond of the Interreg projects because they show exactly this collaboration, this Europe coming together to tackle one issue. And as we see, all of these social issues, they have now EU element because of the global crisis that we are facing. So people coming together and tackling these issues on any of those specific objectives that Miguel already listed, it's already great, of course. Our focus is quite a lot on social inclusion and on skills development, but also, as Miguel mentioned, culture and tourism can also come up with really amazing examples for projects. So yeah, when teams come together to bring innovation, this is what we really want to see and to promote. And in many cases, this just means implementing in another place in a different context, an idea that already works somewhere else.
Excellent, thank you. Miguel, anything to add?
I think Boryana has made definitely a very important point also to remark, and it's something that we're very glad to see is definitely bringing different partners together and ensuring that different aspects, either by representing specific groups or ensuring sort of a multi-level partnership is definitely a way to go forward to strengthen the project proposal and also ensuring that this is adequately implemented on the ground. So this multi-level, multi-stakeholder partnership that can be achieved specifically through Interreg Europe, as we see, is the ideal way to go. So this is a sort of a small point I wanted to add in addition to what Boryana has mentioned.
Well, thank you. At this point, I want to thank you both very much for contributing to our discussion and for giving us an overview of just how many different issues and aspects there are within the social sphere. And I see that we do have some work ahead of us. So thank you for now. If you have any other questions to DG Regio or Miguel or Boryana, please feel free to put those in Slido. We'll pass them on to them. Right now, I want to bring in my colleague, Mariame Ammour, who is one of our policy officers from the Joint Secretariat of Interreg Europe. And we'll start going into how Interreg Europe, how we can help you to address these challenges and what we can all do together. Mariame, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. So yes, my name is Mariame and I will introduce you all you need to know to build a relevant and successful partnership, give you also some tips for the second call based on the first call lessons, and finally have a deeper look at social Europe in the frame of Interreg Europe. So as most of you know, the European Union promotes cooperation between regions and countries to help their economic and social development and to tackle the obstacles of borders. And to do so, the European territorial cooperation, what we also call Interreg, is organized under multiple strands that you can see on the screen. And these 4 strands are here to make cooperation happening everywhere in Europe and beyond. So let's make it quick. Strand A aims at implementing cross-border programs, while Strand B is larger as it focuses on transnational cooperation. Then you easily understand that Strand C is even wider as it covers the whole Europe. So this is why we only have 4 programs there, and this is where Interreg Europe stands. The particularity of interregional cooperation strand is that it aims at boosting the effectiveness of cohesion policy. And finally, the specificities of outermost region are recognized through Interreg D. Let's go now with few basics but key elements of the program. So the new budget has increased and the total budget amounts now to nearly 380 million euros. Also, we are now working with only one cross-cutting priority on capacity building, and this capacity building applies to all topics relevant to the cohesion policy. And the strategy decided by the partner states is still to allocate a majority of fundings to a certain number of subjects. And to make it quick as well, it's mainly smarter, greener, and also some issues under more social Europe. So these topics are part of what we call the concentration principle, which consists of allocating 80% of the total budget to this topic. Finally, Interreg Europe is also the only Interreg program where all EU regions are eligible, and we are also working with 2 associated countries that are Norway and Switzerland. But what is the objective of Interreg Europe? Interreg Europe aims at improving regional development policies, and how we do that, it's mainly through capacity building and exchange of experience. So we do this learning process via the identification and transfer of good practices that are developed in Europe. And this is a program that allows policymakers involved in regional development policies to get support in finding new solutions by finding inspiration, in fact, so they can solve concrete challenges they face on their territory. And this rationale is very important because it has 2 core consequences. So the first one is that we are mainly dedicated to policymakers, so those responsible for delivering and implementing the policy instruments. And the second element is that we are there for learning. So Interreg Europe is a learning program. It's a capacity building program. We are primarily focusing on exchange of experience. So it really allows you to have access to the experience of others. And this makes Interreg Europe very different from the other programs. To achieve this obvious objective of improving policies, we are financing 2 kinds of actions. The project that everybody knows, so a certain number of partners, a region are exchanging on their experience and are sharing their good practices. And then the second action is the policy learning platform. So with the policy learning platform, we try to further exploit all the richness we receive from the project, so mainly the good practices. And with this platform, we will try to digest a bit all the contents and make it available to everybody. And if I may get back now to the project objective, you will see that what I was saying for the program is simply translated in the project. So if you are interested in an Interreg project, this will be to improve policy instruments, so public interventions from the different regions you will involve in your project. And on the activity side, as I told you earlier, this is a capacity building program. So everything is about learning, and primarily this is learning by exchanging experiences. And we can cite some traditional activities that we are used to do for exchanging experience, such as workshops, study visit, peer reviews, staff exchange. But all these kind of activities are here to help you to contribute, to identify, analyze, disseminate, and in the best case, to transfer the good practices. Finally, the projects are organized in 2 phases, and all projects now are last 4 years. It will be 3 years for what we call the core phase and 1 year for the follow-up phase. The core phase is here. It's where you will have the exchange of experience. And at the end of these 3 years, ideally, you will reach a policy change. And then when with the follow-up phase of 1 year, we keep working together with the project to see how it goes after the policies are improved. You also need to know who is eligible, and that is something we cannot avoid. So of course, considering the rationale and the objective of the program, the public authorities are eligible, and also public law bodies or bodies governed by public law. And we have a third possibility, which is private non-profit organization. I would like to continue with the most important information for you today, because this is a fundamental element. If you want to be serious with the program objective, which is to improve regional development policies, you need to make sure that the policy responsible authority is involved in the project. So there is a requirement, and maybe it's the most challenging for you, which is to have for at least half of the policy instruments addressed in your project, the policy responsible authority must be a partner. So there is no choice anymore. For at least half of them, they must come as partner. And for those that cannot be involved in the project, then they still need to come as associated policy authority. So for us, it's very, very important to have policymakers on board. So this associated policy authority will accompany the other project partner addressing the policy instruments. In addition to that, you need to create in each region a stakeholder group. And the stakeholder group represent the ecosystem of the relevant organizations that you will need to have if you want to increase your change to reach a policy change at the end. I would like to end maybe the partnership requirements with the geographical coverage. So we have a special recommendation in this program. The idea of Interreg Europe is to go beyond what you usually do in other Interreg programs. And it's also to mix more advanced and less advanced regions. So we strongly encourage a broad coverage. And then the program divided Europe in 4 areas: North, East, East, West, and South. So you can see them in different colors on the map. And the requirement is that in your partnership, you need to ensure that at least one partner from each area is represented, so that you ensure a very broad coverage in your partnership. And then I will go to the co-financing. So what I can say quickly about it is that this is the maximum allowed by the regulation for public authorities from the EU, and 70% for private non-profit organizations. The rate also depends on your location, so not only your legal status. So for Norway, this is 50%, and for Switzerland, sorry, we kindly invite you to approach your national point of contact to see what are the co-funding possibilities. Now let's have a look at the results of the first call. Yes, so on the 31st of May, we closed the first call and we received 134 applications, which is quite nice. And in the pie chart, you can see that the majority applied under Smarter Europe, More Social Europe, and Greener Europe. And it's in line with the strategy of the program, so it's a bit reassuring. And then if we look at social, we can see that it represents 26%, which indicates that there is a high interest from our target group to tackle social challenges. Then next slide, please. But still, there are some lessons learned from this first code that we want to share with you. And first, please make sure that your partnership goes beyond transnational cooperation. So for instance, be reminded that Slovenia, Bulgaria, and some part of France, even if they are not on the South area as defined by the program, they still belongs to the MED program, which creates an unbalanced partnership if they are all selected in the partnership and all participating in the partnership and then be dominant. Also, please make sure that the policy responsible authority status is correct, as if the policy responsible authority is not coming as partner, it must come as associated policy authority. And this also impacts the 50% rule of policy responsible authority coming as project partner. And then regarding the policy instrument, so please make sure that the topic tackled by the policy instrument is relevant regarding the issue addressed by the projects. And finally, the requirements regarding investment for job and growth goal programs. So please make sure that the one that you have selected has investment for job and growth goal program is an actual one, as it is an eligibility requirement. And if it's not the case, then the condition is not met, which is a pity. Then let's have a look at the future now. So the second call is already on its way. And as you can see, on the 15th of March, we will launch it. It will last 12 months. For the second call, all topics will be opened, and I suggest to go have a look at what we have under the policy objective of more social Europe. So once you have your project ID, you will need to select a specific objective. And under more social Europe, there are 6 specific objectives. In this first slide, you can see you can find employment, healthcare, and culture and sustainable tourism. So these 3 first specific objectives are falling under the concentration principle that I mentioned earlier. And in fact, those specific policy areas are the most relevant for and most urgent for the EU. And this is why the program plans to concentrate the largest share of its budget, so 80% on this selection of specific objectives. So the specific objective of employment covers the effectiveness and inclusiveness of labor markets, the access to quality employment and the social economy. Then we have healthcare that tackles the equal access to healthcare, the health system resilience, and challenges focusing on family-based and community-based care. Culture and sustainable tourism is about culture and tourism for economic development, but also social inclusion and social innovation. The second slide presents the 3 remaining specific objectives that are falling under more social Europe. So these are education, social inclusion, and integration of third countries. So although they are not in the concentration principle, they still fall within the scope of the cohesion policy and are therefore considered as relevant to the program. So what we hear by education is issues on accesses to education, training, and lifelong learnings, distance and online education and training. Social inclusion is dealing with the inclusion of marginalized communities, low-income households, and disadvantaged groups. And finally, the integration of third countries is covering socio-economic integration of third country nationals, including migrants. But for all these 6 specific objectives, there might be some cross-cutting topics, but please keep in mind that on the social components must be dominant. Otherwise, they might better fit under another policy objective. Yes, last but not least, please make sure your project idea is innovative and built on past achievements. So therefore, we strongly recommend checking the program website and have a look at the projects already financed by the program. This will help you to make sure that your application has a clear added value and innovative character compared to the project already financed. And next slide, please. Even if the policy objective of Social Europe was not directly addressed in the previous period, we can still find some relevant project that could be connected to it. So the previous program already funded some pertinent project on sustainable tourism, and we can cite Star Cities or Ramsat. Also, some projects were addressing cultural heritage, such as SWARE. And finally, from a social economic point of view, we can cite Social Seeds project. Well, I think this is the end of my presentation. So thank you for your attention. And I give you the floor back, Miia.
Thank you, Mariame. Thank you, Mariame, for this overview. I am very happy to report that our chat team has been doing an excellent job. We've been getting questions during your presentation. There are people who would like to know more about eligibility, the structure of the partnership, what type of organizations are eligible, and so forth. But our chat team has covered all of these in Slido. So if you are interested in seeing what questions have already been asked, or if you have asked a question, have a look at Slido because you have the full answers there from our team. I would actually like to ask you something else, Mariame, at this point. You talked about the important things to keep in mind, but knowing that we have a lot of people who are new to Interreg Europe and who might be thinking about their first project ever, do you have maybe 1, 2, or 3 really key things to keep in mind as they start discussing with each other today. And while I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, you also said that it would be good to look at projects that have already been implemented, look at all of the past activities and build on them. Quick question to all of our participants. How many of you have been in Interreg Europe project before? Raise your hand with the reactions in Zoom. And let's see, I won't put you in the spotlight. You don't need to say anything, but I just want our other participants to maybe spot you in case they need more tips or advice. And while we see the hands go up, and I hope the participants are taking note, Mariam, your tips to keep in mind for this discussion and networking.
Yes, I would say that the most important is to make sure that you have the policy responsible authorities in your partnerships. This is super important, knowing that we are addressing policy instruments, and this allows to make sure that policy improvements will be reached by the end of the project. I think this is the most important. This is what you have to keep in mind.
Simple enough. Keep that in mind, and also take a look at the participant list. There are 20 hands up at the moment. These people have already experience from interregional cooperation. If you need more practical tips, take note, maybe reach out to them, ask them to tell you what their tips would be. Now, Mariam, a few more points from you. What else can we do for people preparing projects? What kind of assistance is available? What can we do to help?
Yes, to do so. So we invite you to use our online assistant tools to prepare your application. So the program proposes several tools to help you to build your application. So in case you need inspiration to develop your project idea, you can explore the program website and get inspiration from the project approved. And as mentioned earlier, this will also help you to make sure that your project is innovative. Then there is also a section in the program website that allows you to share what you are working on with the community. And this is a great opportunity for you to let people know about what you are working. And also people can get in touch with you in case they are interested in the topic you are working on, or the other way around. So your project is progressing well, but you still want to have more region involved, then you can have a look and find partners in the community, and you will find those that are sharing the same interests. Once your project idea is mature, we would recommend to use the self-assessment tool that consists of 8 questions, so it's rather short, and it will help you to confirm that your project idea is relevant and that you are going in the right direction. Once the call is opened, then the program also offers the possibility to ask for feedback and receive personalized comments on your application, so just before submitting. And at that stage, you will get a tailor-made support. Next slide. Then also what is important for you to know is that the program offers key resources such as the program manual, but also the core document that will be available soon, and also the website. And finally, I would insist on the fact that please do not hesitate to take contact with your national point of contact in case you have questions related to your region. Thank you. And then finally, to assist you in the process, at any time, we encourage you to carefully read the program documents. And also, we invite you to use our assistant tools that have been developed for you. So they are there, please use them. And last but not least, we recommend to get to know our selection process, so you have all details about what is expected from you in terms of eligibility and quality criteria. So thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Mariam. I think we've given a lot of tips and some useful guidance to our participants today, and I hope you are getting ready for networking, because that is starting very, very soon. At this point, thank you, Mariam. Thank you, all of the colleagues. If there are any additional questions, feel free to pop those in Slido. We will cover them there. Have a look at the links in the chat. There are quite a few important ones. Have a look at the program manual, all the documentation available, and be sure to review the full call application pack once it's available next year. Another question that has been asked in both in the chat and in Slido has been about how to reach out to each other, how to get the contact info of people who are here or who are here today. We will not be sharing a participant list as such, but by registering to this event, you have all become or are you are members of the Interreg Europe community. And the community, as you've just heard, provides a lot of tools for you to reach out to each other. So take note at the very least of any interesting names or people that you've seen today in the chat or on the list or later on in the discussions. You'll find them in the community. You can use the tools there to reach out to each other. We also have a networking table that you can use to really build groups around project ideas. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the community is really there for you, and the website and all the online tools are there for you, so make good use of them. This brings us to the end of the first block, as I explained in the beginning. Now we are moving to the second block of the day where you get to take the floor. Before we do that, another poll, which we will launch right now, is for me to get a little bit of an overview of, out of those of you who are still going to stay for the networking and who might have been here really just for the information. And I would also like to know if you plan to use some of these online tools or the community to connect with each other. Do check them out if you're not familiar with them yet. There are plenty of very useful tools. We have a self-assessment tool that you can use to test your project idea with a few clicks. We have the community for you to reach out to each other. We have all kinds of tutorials and advice available online as well. So those would be useful for you to use. And whether or not you will stay in the networking for the next hour is very much of my interest. I see that you are replying, and half of you are planning to stay. Some of you will leave, which is understandable. Agendas are busy for everyone, but still check out the community and do keep in contact with each other even after the event. Don't let this be just a one-off thing. Let this be a start of some future cooperation. Some of you are not sure yet, which is also fine. You still have time to think. We are going to be here for you for the next hour as well. All right. If you haven't replied yet, do so now, because I will ask my colleagues to close the poll in 5 seconds or now. Let's have a look at the results. Let's see how it looks. 50% of you, 88 people at least, are going to stay, which is a good group. There should be potential future partners among them. 23% will have to leave, and 27% are still thinking about it. I'm happy to see that 75% of you are planning to use the online tools for partner search and networking. 3% are not. Maybe still give it a try. And 22% don't know. Go and check it out. You'll find 1 or 2 things that can help you prepare your project for sure. All right. Thank you for these inputs. Now let's have a look at how networking works. Today, our focus is going to be on social, building a more social Europe together, and we'll talk about some project ideas. We'll give you the floor to introduce your topics and thoughts and see if you find some partners. Earlier this week, on Tuesday, we talked about Smarter Europe. The material from this session and the session we had earlier this week will be available online by the end of the week. That means the recording of the plenary part, as well as the presentations. The networking will not be recorded. So if you don't stay, you're missing out on all of that information and the opportunities to connect with each other. We still have more of these networking events coming up. At the end of the month, on the 29th of November, we will be talking about Greener Europe. And on the 1st of December, we will cover connected citizens and governance, the 3 other topics covered by our program. And if you're hesitating a little bit, if you're not quite sure if project cooperation is for you, good news, we've got more. You heard Mariame mention the policy learning platform, which gives you plenty of other opportunities to get involved in exchanges with other regions. And there is an event where you can learn more about the policy learning platform and the value of networking and building connections across regions. That's on the 5th of December, so save the date for that as well. And save the date for the call launch, 15th of March. It's going to happen in Stockholm during our Interregional Cooperation Forum, Europe Let's Cooperate, one-day event where you'll get all of the information. You'll have a possibility to have discussions around project ideas, but also get our feedback on your project ideas. So do save the date, and we hope to see you there as well. Important dates there. This covers what we wanted to share with you today, the key bits of information. Before we hand the floor over to you, we're going to open one more poll, and this is going to be a mid-session evaluation. Give us some feedback. We'll leave it running there while I start taking you through the networking, but just let us know how it's been so far. Has it met your expectations? Did you get the info you were looking for? Has it been useful? And if networking is what you came here for, we will start with that. Now, how it is going to work. It is going to work as follows. We will have breakout rooms where you can talk about specific project ideas that we will introduce briefly very soon. And we will also have some open areas where you can talk about all of the different aspects and areas of social. So you can talk about the labor market, you can talk about healthcare, culture, sustainable tourism, education, social policies and training. And this choice will be fully up to you. You can choose where to go, which discussions to participate in. These discussions will be driven and facilitated by you. So in the idea rooms, it will be the person who proposed the idea leading the discussion. In the open areas, it is your responsibility to kick off the discussion and start discussing. You'll be able to switch between the rooms between now and 12, and we hope you find some good connections. Those of you who were with us for SMART on Tuesday know that we did have some technical issues, but we hope that we've fixed those, and let's hope that it works. Let's hope that you'll have a chance to connect with each other. Let's have a look at the ideas that or what to do with the ideas that were already submitted. As I said, we have online tools to help you connect with each other, and I hope that you will stay connected after the event. You have a possibility to pick up ideas during the discussion today. You can collect contact information, use the chat, as many of you have already done, so I hope you've made use of that. If you haven't, I would still encourage you to go and have a look at our networking tables where all the ideas that will be discussed today are presented. You will also find the information of who hosted the discussion, who presented the idea, and you will find a group of people interested in that idea. And you can join that group with one single click. All you need to do is click on a little button that has a thumbs up and says, I'm interested, and you'll become a part of this group, and it will then help you to reach out to each other after the event. So this is my number one tip for following up afterwards.